everyone. Today I've got a video about repairing broken pole sections. I've already done a video on side pullers, which was quite popular. I feel there are other videos out there on those sort of subjects, but for whatever reason people like my video, so I thought I'd do one on this. And the only reason I'm doing one on this is because I'm an idiot and I broke my pole. I broke my pole recently. I think I mentioned it in one of my live match videos. I broke it just before the match started by trying to step over my pole while it was on the rollers, which was very, very stupid of me. So if you want to repair a pole that's completely split like this, you need to have a jig like this or something similar in order to get that alignment right. You don't want your pole like that or wonky, even slightly down the length of a 16-meter pole, or this is the number 6 section, so there's going to be, I think it's number 6, could be number 7, but there's going to be several sections further down the pole. It'll be very obvious, and also it'll just create a stress point. It wants to be nice. So I thought I'll show you it jigged up. I'm not going to be repairing today because I'm waiting for some materials to arrive, and I'll just show you quickly how my jig works. My jig works on the same principle as the one that's on the internet that I'll post up, but my dimensions are probably different because I've just used what wood I had available. So you can follow by all means, if you're not sure or not confident, then follow the instructions that I'll give you a link to for making one of these. But if you've got bits of wood lying around and you want to make do with what you got, which is kind of how I roll, then just bear with me for a minute or two and we'll go through. So I'm just cutting these cable ties off. I'm probably going to get some slightly bigger ones, slightly fatter, slightly longer, for when I'm actually doing the repair, just so they get a better grip. Better grip is good. I'm going to move this pole section because, as we've already established, I'm very clumsy and I like to break these things. So I'm going to put it up on a rack out the way, out of arm's way, till I'm ready to repair it. Stay there. Right, so what do we have here? We have essentially two pieces of, or it was actually one piece of plywood chopped in half, put on top of itself, and then another piece of plywood put in between to space it. So what have you got to be, what are you going to be thinking about when you do this? So what I had before was this plank of wood, this plank of plywood was twice as long as it is now, and I chopped it in half and put the two pieces on top of one another. Now it was important before I did that I selected a piece of wood that had a straight edge all the way down. It's got to be straight, so that when you put that on there and that on there, to put an angle for the camera, they're aligned. Put that one on there and that one on there, they're aligned. So that's the most important part of this whole jig, is the alignment of those two pieces of those two dimensions with these two dimensions, so that when you put your pole on there, when you put your pole, the other half of your pole on there, they're pointing at each other, so they guide the pole sections together. If one's higher, they'll be out. If one's wonky, they'll be out. If one's leaning down or leaning up, they'll be out. They've got to be the same. Next phase, it's important to assess the damage that's been done to these poles before you start thinking about repairing them. I mean, the ends of these poles are not really going to offer you any more structural support anyway, so the wrap's going to give the structural support. But you have got to work out how far down your cracks come to make sure you get your overlap right. But the other thing that you've got to watch out for is stuff like this. I mean, you can see that there, see that? That just wants to flap away. You don't want to break that off and leave a hole, because when you put your wrap around, your wrap will just sort of flatten out at that point. And then it'll come round again and it'll flatten, because it'll go tight. The tightest is straight line, and that will actually create like a stress point and be more likely to break there. So what you want to do is try and get that back where it should be. But the problem is that offers no resistance really. So when you're wrapping, if you pull any sort of tension on it, it'll pop that back in again, and then you'll end up with your straight line. So what I'm doing is, when I find bits like this, is I'm pre-mixing some of the resin up today, and then I've just been down and bought some little paint brushes like this, You know, look at that, you can get them for £1. I think I got them from the workshop, the local works. And then I'm going to pre-mix some of the resin. I'm just going to get that paint, little paint brushes, and I'm just going to sort of ease it back, paint underneath, and then push it back up, and leave that 24 hours so that it glues it in place. It will offer no extra structural strength in itself, but if it holds that part out so that you've still got a nice circle to wrap around, that's what you want. And what I've also done is I've made sure that this the right one, so make sure that when they come together with no big gaps. And I'm not sure if you can see this, but so there's no bits missing. So you can see that there, but there's no bits missing. It's like you know, this break matches this break, so there's no holes or anything. If you've got holes and problems like that, you're probably better off just getting a professional to look at it. It's been a couple of days since I last looked at this because I've been busy, but I did put a little bit of resin on these broken ends to try to just keep them round. If you remember right, there were some parts of this broken section here were sort of moving, and we didn't want them moving because we wanted them to stay in a round orientation throughout the process, so that we can give ourselves a nice round repair. Because this acts as the mandrel that you're going to wrap your carbon around, and if your carbon's not round, when it goes round, it won't be as strong if it's got any flat spots on it. So what I'm doing now is I'm lining up the crack perfectly so that I know that it's exact right. So now I've got that exactly right. I can see that joins up where it joined up before. I can give these a little bit more of a tweak. Obviously, you've got to be careful how you go with these. You don't want to go too mad, else you'll end up creating something that needs another repair. You don't want to put a crack in it. And the pole will just still be able to move around on these. And that might be because I haven't made this gap big enough for the bigger sections. It works really well on the smaller sections, but the bigger sections, perhaps you want a slightly wider gap there. Well, I don't know if you can see on the camera there, that is mated up lovely. When I look down the end, it's straight. I can't see any misalignment. That's exactly what I want. So that now is going to hold that hands-free, and I can wrap away. I've got this big gap here so that when I'm putting the wrap around, I can. When I'm putting the tape on later, which you'll see, if you've not seen this before, it's all there. So that is how to get it onto the jig. It's really simple. Couple of cable ties, wiggle it around, make sure, and kind of by having that button up really nicely, you can see if you're out of alignment because the crack's not lined up nice, but that's beautiful. What I'm going to do now, just off camera, is I'm just going to just give it one last bit of a sanding. Got a bit of sanding, little bit of sanding, and I'll just give it one while it's in the jig there. I can just, just give it one last little sand all around the area that's going to be repaired, and then clean it off and dry it off. I don't want any dust on there. You can get an alcohol wipes if you've got some of the best thing to clean it with, but I haven't got any. I'll just use a microfiber towel and a cloth and just wipe it all, make sure it's all gone. So when I come back next, we'll be looking at marking up making the right size piece of carbon for this job. Right guys, I'll give this a little rub down. You ain't got to go mad, you don't want to take too much material off, and I'm just giving it a little wipe with this cloth just to make sure there's no dust on there. Now I need to just work out how much carbon I need, and you're going to go around twice. Twice is the recommended amount. So this is a piece of carbon that's come off the side of my, that's It's come off the side. This is my material, and sometimes you get the stringy bits that come off the side. You can use a bit of string or a bit of fishing line or whatever. Just hold it at the top, making it look harder than it should be. Hold it at the top, come all the way around once, come all the way back around again twice, and just get your scissors and just snip it off there. Oops, it's escaped. Snip it off there. And then you know that length of material will just take you around twice, slightly overlapping. I'd rather it was slightly overlapping than slightly short. So then you can take your material. I've got my very end piece of material here, and you can just lie that along the edge of the material like so. You get your material, lie it down. You know that you can just cut it across there. That's the right width. That's the right length. So once you've done that, your next stage is you've got to put a coating of resin where you're going to put the wrap on. So I'm going to mix up some resin. So I've got my resin. I've accidentally mixed up too much because it's difficult to, you know, once you've put some of the hit that there then. Once you've put some of the resin in, you've got to put the, you know, that's it, you're committed, and then you've got to put the right amount of hardener in with it as well. So you know, just be careful, you don't want to waste it. So add what we're doing at this stage now. Those that have seen the one for putting the side pullers in that I did the video for that, it's very similar to that. So all I'm doing this time is just eyeballing it. Got me resin, I've got a brush. Get these brushes, like a whole pack of them for £1 from your local pound shop or something. Put that so that the crack sits in the middle of your. This is like 6 inches, maybe a bit wider. This piece of material. So you want to put it right in the middle, and then mark the end on the top there. Just come in ever so slightly from the end, not right to the end, and then there. Ever so slightly from the end. So they're your 2 marks. And on the top, I don't know if you can see them on the video, but they're quite obvious on the top there because they're like 2 wet blobs. And the reason I got this little brush is to try to emphasize to you guys about how small an amount you should be applying. You can use a bigger brush to apply this, and in the previous video for doing the top kits I actually used a much bigger brush. And I will be using a bigger brush for the next stage, because on the next stage you want to be wetting it a little bit more. Unfortunately, these cheap brushes I've got, the bristles come off, but you can pluck them off. You can pluck them off afterwards with your fingers. It's not a problem. So if you get too thick a layer on here, you're just going to make a mess, and you're just going to make work for yourself. This essentially is just enough material, just enough resin on here. Epoxy resin, just enough of it so that when it dries in about 2 or 3 hours time, it's going to go tacky, and then we'll be able to stick the first wrap of our carbon on, and it will hold it there so that we can then put a little bit more resin on and wrap the second on. And so this really just acts as like a, I don't know how you explain it. It just holds the carbon in place, and it gives you something to pull against so you can have it tight. So you can see, no rush with this because it's going to take 3 hours now for this to even go tacky. Maybe a bit longer because it's cold in my shed today. It's probably too cold in my shed today to be doing this, really. You're better off doing it indoors if you can. But with this jig, I like the ability of having a vise, so I can't do that in my kitchen table. I mean, that is it. I've wasted all that resin there because it's just useless now. What I'd say is, if you've got any pole floats that have got cracked or the paint's chipped off and you're worried about water getting into them, or any other equipment, put a bit of this on and just let it dry. It'll make your pole floats rock hard. So what will happen now is we'll go away, come back in 3 hours, and that will have set so that it might even be 4 hours depending upon which resins you're using, how you've mixed it and what the temperature is, but it will set so that when you put your finger on it, it'll stick, and then that's what we want. Right guys, back again. Time to start. It's gone a bit tacky now. You just feel it sticking to your finger, you know it's right time. It's been a few hours. Just got the instructions here for my kit. So I'll get my kit from polerepairs.co.uk. I'm not affiliated with them. I've used their kits before to do my top kit pullers. I've used their kits before to do repairs like this. I've not had any problems with their repair kits. So, you know, go with their repair kits. You get the resin that you need, you get the carbon matting that you need, you get little pots and stirrers and gloves and stuff, but I've used them all up. And you get something called, you get this finishing tape also, which we'll come on to in a moment. So, you know, if you're looking for somewhere to get your kit from, it's 30 quid. You'll be able to do two big pole sections with 30 quid and have some left over. So it's good value for money. It's certainly cheaper than buying a new pole section. And if you're like me and you've got an old pole like this, you just can't buy a replacement section for it. Well, you've got to go out and start buying second-hand ones, which in itself probably going to end up not need a repair anyway. It might have a crack or a dink in it when you have a closer look at it. I'm just tidying up my fabric. It's a bit messy, but that's not how it normally comes. It's just because I've used it a few times and I've made it a bit messy. So what do? It's really simple. You need, let me get, oh no, what we'll do first is we'll just hang this on here. So you put this central over your spot that you've already resined, and you just lay it on, and because it's tacky, you probably can't see that from the side that you're on. I can rotate this a little. Well, I don't want to rotate it because that's not a good move. Leave it how it is. Get a little brush. Got a bit of a bigger brush this time. It might be too big actually. What have I got here? No, it's all I've got. Just using what brushes I've got. So, bit of a bigger brush, and just pat that down onto the. Let's move that out of the way before I knock it over. Pat that down onto your tacky resin, and then now you can pull this round gently, keeping some tension on it. Keep tension on it and just wrap it round until you get back to the top. Gently. Make sure you've got no slack in it anywhere. So that is now sticking to that nice tacky section. So what you've got now is you've got your carbon exactly where you want it, your carbon material. But you need to get resin into all of the gaps between the thing, between the weave, between the material, you know, between the carbon. So what you've got to do now is get your mix. Now make sure you've already mixed some up. Make sure you've mixed it in the right ratios as per instructed, which for this particular product is 2 to 1. Make sure you've mixed it really thoroughly, because you don't want it to be badly mixed, otherwise it won't set properly. And then what you do is lift up the second layer to expose that first layer again that you just stuck down, and put a nice coating on. But don't go insane and put loads on, because it's the same as it was. It's the same as before. You end up making a mess if you've got too much. And the first few times I've done this, I've put too much on. So your tendency will be to put too much on. But what you've got to remember is that this material is really, really thin if you look down the profile of it, and all you're trying to do is fill up that gap. So you've not got a lot of gap to fill, so you don't need a heavy coating. And when we come around to the next stage in a minute, when we start putting the tape on to help us finish it. So once you've sort of done, I've done now all the way around to the bottom. So once you've put the tape on, it helps us finish it. That's going to squeeze that resin through. It's going to make it really nice. It's going to make it all, you know, make it all sort of meld together really nice. So I've gone all the way around to the bottom on that side, but you couldn't see. So I'm just going to do the same on this side now. So it's going to come up. I've got this quite high because my bench is quite high. I made this bench myself, and I purposely made it high because I'm a tall gentleman, and I'm sick of working on little tiny low things, so I made my own. Anyway, getting sidetracked. So just keep applying it on. All you're doing is wetting it really. So you're wetting that enough so that when you wrap it around again, kind of surface tension will stick it in place, and then you can put a little bit more on if needed, to make sure it's wetted through the second layer as well. Just trying to make sure there's some resin coming through all the layers. So now what I find works best. So now we've got this loose piece, but we've wet all the way around on top of the first layer of carbon sheeting. So what we can do now is, again, you want to pull that tightly if you can, but try not to deform the weave. And you can use the brush, because the brushes are wet as well, and it just helps to brush it round to make sure there's no loose spots. You want it tight. And then as it comes down on the end, it's gonna try and stick up. Just get a bit more resin on and try and lie it flat. You will take a few of the strands out on this, especially on the end there. I've not found a way of not doing that. If anybody knows a way, let me know. So I don't know if you're picking that up on the camera from the angle that you're at, but that's just to help that end lie down flat now. And then just give it another coat. So you just want it to look wet, but you don't necessarily want to see loads and loads of resin. And you'll be thinking, how's it going to work if he's not got any resin on it? But you'll see in a second. I mean, ultimately, if you put too much resin on, you end up with a slightly messier fix than you would have had, but it still works. So don't worry too much. But I, you know, as I do these more and more, I'm getting more and more experienced in how much resin is required. And you know, sometimes I get disappointed with the finish. And I'm working out how I can get the finish better, and what I've found the best way is always to have just enough resin. You know, you can take your time. It takes hours for this stuff to set. Just want to make sure everywhere is nicely wetted through and you've not missed any spots. But it's not dripping. I'm hoping that's coming through on the camera. It's just a sheen really. Okay. Right, now for the next stage. For the next stage you need to get this. I'm going to use white just so that you can see it better on the camera, but this is just insulation tape. You can use black, it don't matter. Get yourself a couple of 3 pieces. Probably better to use scissors than, probably better if you guys use scissors and bite it like I do. You don't get a very nice finish. I'll do another couple of pieces. You only need 2 really, but there you are. So now we get into the final stage. Anything that's sticking up like that, you get these strands that are sticking up, just try to brush them down, because they'll tidy up when we finish this next stage. It'll all be tidied up. It'll tidy itself up. It's very good. What you get with your kit, for those that haven't already seen this on the previous top kit side puller one that I did, is you get this tape. Now this tape, it's not sticky, it's just plastic, but the inside of the tape, the side of the tape that's facing the reel, it's got a coating on it, which means that the resin won't stick to it. And that can be that's very handy, because that's what we want. We want to we don't want it to stick to it. So what you do, get a bit of tape and just put it on the back and start maybe an inch to the left of the repair. Now you want to go round in the same direction that you wrapped this in. So I started at the top and I wrapped around towards you guys and over. So I want to be wrapping around towards you guys and over, and I want to make sure that the inside of the tape is on the resin, not this side, the outside, because it will stick. And this is the reason why I made all this room, so that I can wrap over. So what you're doing is you're just wrapping, you're trying to wrap the whole pole, keeping a good tension on there, trying to wrap the whole repair, sorry. And each time you come over, you want to go about a third to halfway over the previous wrap, so that there's always some overlap. And then what's happening as you're squeezing it down, you'll start to see the resin, and if you're picking it up on the camera, but when you're looking at it as closely as I am, you'll start to see the resin squeezing through the material, and you'll know what I mean then about you didn't really want too much of this, because the more, what's happening now is anything more than just enough just gets squeezed out the side of the tape, and you'll end up with loads of resin all around, you know, all coming out of your tape at this point if you've got loads of it on there. You do want some resin coming out from the sides of your tape, because that means you've definitely got enough resin in there to have impregnated all of the material. So I'm taking my time because there's no rush, and you only get one chance to do it right, and I'll try to aim for about half. The tape is overlapping the previous wind by about half, so I'll just find, gives you a nice margin for error. So this is going to tighten that. This now tightens that wrap nicely up. It impregnates all of that carbon matting with resin, so that you've got a really nice repair. And then when you get to the end, which you're about to get to, if you keep going until you can't see any more resin under the tape, and you end up with a nice finish as well. Because you want to kind of taper, you want this to taper back down into the pole. So now we're off the repair now, we're onto the pole, but you might be able to pick it up on the camera that there's a little bit of resin still under the tape. But as I come round to here now, I can see the resin is just creeping towards the edge of the tape. So maybe one more wrap, and this last wrap now, it's got no resin under it. So I know that I've tapered that resin down into the blank. It's hard to explain. It's hard for me to explain it to you without you be seeing what I'm seeing. But when you're doing it, you'll know what I mean. Whoop. Get your last bit of tape now, and tape your resin down on the end so it can't come undone. Then you don't have to do this because it'll just come off at the end, but I just like to wipe some of that excess resin off. Don't press too hard or do anything too vicious, because you don't want to move that tape. Okay, so that is now repaired, other than the fact we've got to let it set. I'm hoping that you'll be able to see from there that looks already really smooth, and when we take that tape off, we'll have a finish which in my opinion is acceptable. Some people afterwards will rub this down and then lacquer it. Two things with that: when you're rubbing back down the repair that you've just done only for cosmetic reasons, which means you're making it weaker for cosmetic purposes, not for any practical purposes. And also, really, you don't want to lacquer it, because these poles these days are not that shiny. They're kind of a dull matte, so you you can't win unless you lacquer the whole section, and what's the point of that? So this repair will be shinier than the rest of the pole. You know, if that's something that bothers you, you can rub it down with fine sandpaper and try to find the same sort of sheen. But for me, just leave it as it is. It's a repaired section. Right guys, welcome back. It's been more than 24 hours because I've been busy. I just left this in the shed while I've been busy, so I'm taking this off live. I've not pre-done this, so what you see is what we get. Just take the tape off, just unwrapping. I can feel that's all dry, and it does clunk a little bit, but that's just the where the resin that's gone through the tape. We're just breaking that off as we go around, so it does sound a bit clunky, and it's not actual repair that's clunking, don't worry. You can see that looks lovely. That is lovely and smooth, lovely and shiny. Tape's very long. Just undo it all the way to the end. Take it off. That looks lovely, doesn't it? A little twist around so you can see it. Just going to take you off the stand now so you can have a closer look. See what you think. So here, this bit that looks a bit uneven, that's the end. That's the very end of the wrap. So that's where the little feathered pieces go. That's why you lose your nice shape there. But there you can see the weave nice. You know, it's not an uneven blend. There's no sharp edges. It's not going to cut me when I'm shipping in and out. There's not a significant, you know, it doesn't step up hugely, so that's going to easily telescope inside, you know, pack away inside the number 8 section, no bother at all. So there you have it guys, simple as that. That is now ready to go. We'll cut these cable ties off, and we've got a kit that we can use. We've got a section that we can use, and that will be a strong, if you look down it, it's straight. Sorry about all the noisy messy in the background, but you know, you can see that's nice and straight.